Welcome to Pax Europiana, here from the Kishinev Pogrom Memorial. This was the memorial of the 6th of April, the 19th of April 1903. This was the first of two major pogroms during the Russian imperial decline times in the beginning of the 20th century, and it was a horrible event. There were 49 Jews killed here in the Russian Empire at that time, and also over 600 women were raped. It was a terrible disaster, and it was a turning point in world history because it showed the utter anti-Semitic violence and genocidal intent on which the Russian Tsarist Empire was already bent to, and later it escalated into massive more pogroms and also in expulsion of Jews, and they were in this kind of death spiral of the Russian Empire, which took basically the whole world along during the First World War. It was a horrible start of a horrible time. In 1905, then later, was the Russian-Japanese War, and then they had a second pogrom, because it was always for their own massive kind of failures of social policy, of internal reform, of some kind of modernity, enlightenment in Russia, which they never had. They always blamed for all the internal unrest, for the assassinations, for the loss of the war against Japan and the sinking of the Russian fleet in the Japanese Sea, and all the things. They had a convenient scapegoat. It was the Russian Jews. Yeah? And then they murdered them in some kind of extremist violence, in a nationalistic rage, in this pan-Slavistic Russian nationalism that was then going into hyper mode, and it was always the Jews who were guilty, and then they killed them in that pogrom, in the second pogrom, and then later there was massive violence also. Never forget that during the Russian Civil War, it's called, but it was also full of pogroms and full of violence against Jews, and this was horrible. It was terrible. And we should never forget these terrible deeds, which also the Russian KGB kind of successor organization or predecessor organization, the Okhrana, which was their state police, they have invented all this anti-Semitic propaganda, whatever, the Zion book it's called. Yeah, it's not a book, it's a pamphlet which the Russian Secret Service has invented, yeah, in order to smear the Jews, because the origin of that pogrom was that they claimed the death of one child on the Jews, always with this idea that they would somehow ritually sacrifice them, and then they did all these terrible things to the Jews here in 1903, and then in 1905, and continuously. Also the Soviet Union was full of anti-Semitism, and it was a horrible empire, actually, as we all know. That was actually here for 100 years. They have done this memorial here in the park in one of the suburbs of Kishinev. I had to walk a bit now, but what I would suggest now is to do a bigger memorial for the 120th year. Next year it will be 120 years of that terrible deed, of that atrocity, of that genocidal violence, and to do a big museum here, and also to remind the world on Russian anti-Semitism and on the genocides and pogroms. It should be the International Day Against Pogroms, the 19th of April, not the 6th of April, but the 19th of April, and then make a big monument here and explain all the history of violence against Jews in the Russian Empire, and somehow also document the crimes, first of all. Secondly, apologize to the Jews who died here, but also to document how evil the Russian Empire already was. It was from the beginning very fragile, evil and problematic entity, and all this neo-imperialism which Putin is putting his claims to fame now and his violence on, because somehow he says the Russian Empire was good. No, this was the Russian Empire. It was a genocidal state already bent on genocide and on atrocities. They, in their own internal insecurity, their inability to reform, they have killed their own minorities, religious and political minorities, and that is the Russian Empire for you. It was a horrible state, and it, in its decline struggle, it took the whole world with it in the First World War. as you very well know when you follow my podcast. But what we need here is a big monument, because it should not taint the name of New Moldova, European Moldova. It's not a genocidal state, it's a very European state, Mr. Macron. By the way, it has deserved to be in the European Union. And for that also to show the world, to build also alliances globally for NATO and for EU accession, it's important to mark this 19th of April 2023 as the International Day Against Pogrom, and to make a big museum here and to develop this very well, and also bring all the international guests here, that the new European Moldova has nothing to do with the Russian Empire, with the Soviet Union, with these evil states full of anti-Semitism, and will be part of the European Union, ready to overcome anti-Semitism, anti-capitalism, this protectionism, this rejectionism, this xenophobia, on which we unfortunately have too much, even today in France and in Austria. And that's a big problem. We have to overcome our original sin of anti-Semitism and anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and all the attached phenomenon of hate of the stranger, of this xenophobia. And these are all original European sins, and also very much Russian sins. But we have overcome them, and Russia not, as we see today in 2022 with the terrible war against Ukraine, claiming that they would be Nazis. It's outrageous, it's absolutely free of any facts. And on the contrary, they are really good Europeans fighting for our values in Ukraine, and led actually by a Jewish president, Mr. Zelensky. And what Russia is now doing is completely in the line of what they have done 120 years ago here in Kishinev. They blame it on the others and they kill them, and then they say they are guilty. This is the whole story about the Russian Empire, and Russian neo-imperialism 120 years later is absolutely in that line. Yeah, I came here to apologize also. I always do that when I come here to Babin Yar in Ukraine, and also here to the Kishinev, it's today's word, the capital of Moldova, to apologize for all the crimes the Austrians and the Germans have committed. And it was horrible, the Holocaust and all these atrocities during World War II. But I like to explain that we are very well aware, and we are, of course, have apologized, and we did active contrition. That is a very big step for a nation to do, and it was very necessary. We have learned from our sins. We have not completely overcome them. There is still anti-Semitism in Austria. There is still a lot of anti-Moldovan and anti-Ukrainian sentiment in the mainstream political parties that we all have to overcome. And there's a lot of anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Semitism, unfortunately. But more or less, we have learned from our sins. We have overcome. We are peaceful now, and we are ready for peace and for Europe. And we have too late in Austria. I know that very much. I was also involved in Waldheim years, and I know we were late, and I know it was complicated to restitute. But we have more or less, I think, we have cleared our name. Can we say it like this? It will be never fully clear, but we are trying, and we have made an effort, a major effort, a national effort, a significant effort. And the same thing the Russians must do to clear their name after the fall of Putin. But they have to start fundamentally, and start here in 1903, and then go to the First World War, to the Second World War, to the Civil War, to the Soviet Union, and to today's Putin's wars in Georgia, Syria and Ukraine. And it will be the monumental task to clear the Russian name from all their sins, and that will take decades to come for this process of coping with the past. But they have to start here, and I call Putin to come here and apologize for the crimes of the Tsar. That would be the best start. Good. It's an important place. I call all Europeans to come here as well, to the monument of the pogrom of Kishinev from 1903, and make it the International Pogrom Day at the 19th of April 2023, and I call on the Moldovan authorities and the American and European and Israeli partners to make this monument a very big monument, and also a big museum to explain the sins of anti-Semitism in the Russian Empire, and let nobody claim the Russian Empire was any good. It was a genocidal state in the Caucasus, in Central Asia, and against the Jews. And here this should be made very clear to everybody. Thanks a lot for listening. More to come from Pax Europiana. Bye.